Welcome back to another Boomer Bust Editorial. I'm your host, Terry, and today I got a little bone to pick. I mean, I've talked about the NBA before, but this is the perfect example of why the NBA is so trash. And so we're talking about the Magic Johnson situation with the Lakers. For those of you who don't know, Magic Johnson stepped down as the Lakers president impromptu conference in which he pretty much blindsided, as some people say, the Lakers because they didn't expect him to resign at that moment. They thought it was going to happen during the off season, stuff like that. He decided to go out on his own and do an impromptu press conference on the last game of the season, and he stepped down. And he mentions that he didn't tell, the powers that be that he was doing this. So whatever. There's a lot to unpack here. But number one, I want to just talk about this idea of who the NBA is giving power positions to. Not exactly what the talent is and all that. I could talk about that a lot, and I'll probably mention it later. But in general, who are they giving power to? Let me take you back a number of years where we had Jason Kidd, NBA great, future Hall of Famer if he's not in the Hall of Fame. He retired as a player, last game of his career. And the following week, this man was named the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. And so this, I think, kind of kicked off this really kind of, I don't know what's the word, like amateur league type stuff. Like some you would expect from the XFL or the AAF or whatever they were called before they, rest in peace. Or, the WCW or any of these things where it was like, these are amateur leagues that aren't the real deal, just kind of being goofy. And they're doing things to attract fans. And so you had Jason Kidd become a head coach days maybe after he retired as a player, a head coach. As a football coach, a previously expiring football coach, now, I'm into football, of course, but I'm not on that path. But at one point I was on that path. I've met many people that ran that path, many people that wanted to be on that path. It is a grind. It is a crapshoot, just like it is in the NFL to be an NFL player, let alone a starter or any of that. It is a crapshoot. It is such a small percentage chance that you would ever get in the NFL as a player. It's a small percentage chance you'll get in as a coach. And so there's so much that you have to go through to get into that. Usually you play and you're good. And then you use those connections to become a GA or graduate assistant. And you become a grunt as a slave pretty much. And if you do a good enough job, you get put on the staff after you graduate master's program. And then from there, when someone gets fired, you move up, and then you do a good job there, and you keep moving up. You follow people, you go to different places, you stay with your coaching tree, all that stuff to eventually maybe be good enough to make an NFL job. And so those paths are so hard to do. And in any sport is hard to do because it's a limited amount of spots. But the NBA has made a complete mockery of that. And I think this idea of Jason Kidd becoming that head coach was the first step. Now, there's been player coaches in the past, a lot of different things. And then in the NBA, it's a lot easier to control the team as a superstar, LeBron James, because there aren't as many players on the court. Like, yes, a quarterback is big in football, but there's, 54 players on the team, 11 players on one side of the ball. you can't be as important as the 5 players that's playing in the NBA that play both sides of the ball. If one of them is the best player in the world, they got a lot of power. And so there's been these ideas of a coach not really being as important in the NBA. But I think when Jason Kidd became the head coach, that's when it really became a mockery. And so then what followed, you had these other big time players or well-known smart players retiring as players and then becoming coaches. Besides the idea of being close in, relativity with these players. Yeah, you could be a lot older than these players, but still you were just a player. It's the same thing like going from being a player to an owner. Like they're two different sides. You work together, but they're two different sides. And so it's hard to have the respect and, the actual reverence as a coach when you were just a player playing alongside or against these other players. But besides all that, the fact is they don't go through a process of grinding and having to show the grit and determination to become and earn that spot. And so I think that's what kicked it off. So then eventually we have former players or big name players or whoever becoming coaches. We have them becoming GMs that never been GMs before, know nothing about being a GM. We had people becoming presidents. All this as just a way to have a big name as a part of your team. And so Magic Johnson was the next in the line of that. I mean, Magic didn't coach as a NBA coach. Not like Larry Bird, who went into coaching for a while and then became a GM and a president. No, he never coached. And so he never coached. He was never GM any of this. It's just like, hey, you're a great player. I'm sure you could figure out who great players are. I mean, even Michael, who had big aspirations to be an owner, when he started out becoming a GM and whatnot, he showed that that is not the same skill set as being a player. Look, I know tons of football players in other sports too that are great players but don't understand the game, could never be coaches. And so that's why a lot of times you're like, oh yeah, they can never be a coach. Or even if a player isn't great, you're like, they can be a coach because they understand the game. Understanding the game is one thing, but also having the personality to deal with what you got to deal with. And so all this to say, Magic Johnson blindsides, leaves, and a lot of the reports coming out are saying that he wasn't good at his job. Now, I follow the people with good track records. I mean, it's one thing. I'm not saying you're right or wrong because you don't have a name, but I like to follow and wait to the ones with a string of track records of being right, say stuff. So when I hear someone like an Adrian Wojnarowski, who's been into it for a while, say that from his inside sources, Magic was not good at his job. Magic was barely there. Magic thought that since he was such a big deal, he could do the job his way. And that's fine. The man's got millions and millions of dollars, lots of operations, lots of businesses. He's got the clout from being a great player, all that, cool. But my thing is, when you have people like me, people that are coming up under me, people that are a little bit above me, who would kill, just absolutely give up anything to be at that position, to the people that actually study, the people that actually care, the people that want to deliver a great product for a city, not just because they wore the jersey, but because they actually love the game. And you got just millions probably of people that would never get that chance, but it was given to Magic because of his name and he could care less. I mean, it's a lot like talented players coming into the league, any league, where there's some that realize the importance of getting better and working at the craft, and there's some that's just like, I'm so talented, I'm gonna show up out of shape or whatever, and I'm still gonna dominate. It's the same thing. It's just like, there's so many people that would just die for that position to have that power, and you give the power to people that don't care. And that just encapsulates why the NBA is so trash to me. I mean, because in the NFL, Yes, there's nepotism. As I mentioned, the coaching tree, there's a lot of that, but it weeds people out. The biggest case you can have of nepotism, Rex Ryan and, I forgot his brother's name, but Rob Ryan. So Buddy Ryan's kids who grew up in coaching, they didn't just run into it. They grew up in it. They were always coachers for life. And so, but even still, they got connections through their dad. And there's a lot of people that get connections through other people. But you see that once they weren't cutting mustard, they didn't just get to hang around or they didn't get to resign. No, they got kicked out. And they still, Rex Ryan is doing ESPN. He wants to be on the team, I'm sure. And so those are probably the two biggest cases of nepotism. But a lot of these players, a lot of these head coaches now, especially the best head coaches, they're not some 5-star recruit, ex-Hall of Famer. No, these are a lot of times of players that understand the value, I keep saying it, people that understood the value as a player of what they were given. Because they maybe didn't have all the talent in the world. And maybe they just really love and respected the game. And those are the ones we see rising up the ranks. I mean, we know Rod Woodson took his chance at coaching. Ed Reed is taking his chance at coaching. There's a lot of former players coaching around. But when you're talking about the big prestige positions, GMs, head coaches, and all that, in a league that has a lot more competition in players, you see the results of having people that actually care about the game. And then when you have the disasters, those are usually ones that are more gimmicky. Now, Mike Mayock going into a GM, we'll see where they fall. But traditionally, those are the type of things that become more gimmicky. Now, he knows his stuff and he's good, but he's never been in that position. He didn't have to work his way up. And working your way up into the position is not just some tired old thought in America. It's for a reason. It is for a reason to prove your mantle over and over again and to show how much you really care. And the NBA just does not have that. Now, there's a lack of talent. There's a problem with the draft pool. There's a problem with the coaching in the college level. There's a lot of stuff. But overall, this whole gimmick idea of just getting big names to put into positions they didn't earn, this is one of the very reasons why I think the NBA is such a joke. And I just think it really emphasizes it overall. But anyway, go to the comment section. Let me know what you think about the NBA. What do you think about Magic stepping down? What do you think about this idea of just coaches just kind of being disposable and all this power positions being given to people that don't actually care? So go to the comment section. Let me know. Thumbs up, subscribe, share it around, get the conversation started. And thank you for listening.